Hey, good morning, friends. Allow me to break this intense silence. I hope this will be a warm, informational gathering. Welcome to the GraSPP Research Seminar series and the Forum for the Security Studies Unit. This is sort of a joint venture for the Graduate School of Public Policy and also the institute where I serve as a director, Institute for Future Initiatives. The purpose of our school and our institute is to make university useful for the society. One way that we can approach this issue is to work on global agendas that require immediate attention. And who could be better for our speaker than the Honorable Mr. Atul Khare, our guest of honor today, who is not only among the most successful people working for the United Nations. He works for as the Undersecretary General for the United Nations. He works for operational support. That is the Department of Operational Services, providing logistical support to all of the United Nations, especially in international hotspots. So you can see how important this is. His past records are listed in the handouts here, but I just wanted to mention that Dr. Khare has been extremely active on peacekeeping operations of the United States, so United Nations. He knows what he's working on. And we have yet another honored guest, Mr. Iwai Fumio, who has been the Director General of the Secretariat for International Peace Cooperation Headquarters at the Cabinet Office of the Government of Japan since 2018. That's a very long title, but that really means the Center of Japanese cooperation in international peacekeeping activities. So we have one key speaker on UN operations, on peacekeeping activities, and yet another speaker on Japanese cooperation for such peacekeeping activities. And you didn't come here to listen to me. So without further ado, I'd like to pass the microphone to Honorable Mr. Atul Khare, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Fujiwara. Allow me to say how much of a pleasure and honor it is for me and my delegation, Madam Sashio Miwa and Mr. Takakazu Ito-san, to be here in this Tokyo University with you, a very well-known personality in international relations in Japan and beyond. Your Excellency, Ambassador Iwai-san, thank you for co-hosting the event along with the Tokyo University, and we look forward not only to discussions here, but to continued close collaboration between the United Nations and the International Peace Cooperation Office, which you head. I obviously want to begin, friends, by expressing my deepest appreciation to Tokyo University and to the Cabinet Office Secretariat of the International Peace Cooperation Headquarters for co-hosting this international symposium and for, of course, inviting me, giving me an opportunity to be here with you. Our gathering, which I find nearly full hall, is indicative of the importance that your country, Japan, attaches to the maintenance of global peace and security. But before I go into the theme of today's discussion, let me say a few words on the recent typhoon Hagibis. We are all, world over, deeply saddened by the reports of loss of life and extensive destruction caused by this major typhoon. I would like to convey my Secretary General, my boss, His Excellency Mr. Antonio Guterres, and my own deep condolences to the bereaved families, to the government, and of course to the people of Japan. But at the same time, I also want to acknowledge the extensive and efficient preparations that were made by the authorities and people of Japan for this extreme weather event, which actually happened on the International Day of Natural Disaster Reduction, 13th of October. And I wish a very speedy recovery to all those who were injured, and I hope that those who are missing will be soon found. Coming back to international peace and security, you are aware that Japan has had a very long and active engagement in and commitment to the United Nations peacekeeping. It is the third largest financial contributor to the United Nations peacekeeping budgets, and also to the United Nations regular budget, which includes our special political missions. Many Japanese personnel, including civilian, troops, and police, have served in our missions. So as you can see, Japan is a crucial, critical partner and a vital stakeholder in United Nations peace operations. And it is for this reason that I am very happy to be here today with you to discuss the current context of the UN peace operations, the challenges that they face, and the role of my own department in addressing some of those challenges. Today, the United Nations peace operations, which include both the peacekeeping operations and the special political missions, represent a partnership of over 130 countries who are contributing over 130,000 military personnel who are deployed in different parts of the world, police and civilian personnel for the maintenance of global peace and security. Obviously, I thank Japan for being a part of this important partnership. Over the last 7 decades, 70 years, United Nations peacekeeping has had a positive record of preventing conflict, supporting political processes, and sustaining peace in various corners of the globe. Some recent examples are Côte d'Ivoire. We used to have a peacekeeping operation there till recently, about 2 years ago. And the situation, with the help of peacekeeping operation, has improved to such an extent that not only the peacekeeping operation was closed, but Côte d'Ivoire is actually an elected member of the United Nations Security Council, assisting to bring peace and security to other countries of the world. So this is conversion of a country which was a host of a peacekeeping operation to a country which is contributing to maintenance of international peace and security, of course, with the help of Japan, the United Nations, and other partners. Liberia is also an excellent example of this development, where we had a long-standing peacekeeping operation, but now the operation has been concluded and Liberia seems to be at peace. But looking further back, in our own region, in Asia-Pacific region, we had successes in countries such as Cambodia and Timor-Leste. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the achievements and sacrifices of the Japanese civilian and uniformed peacekeepers. In Cambodia, nearly 27 years ago, many Japanese peacekeepers worked under the overall leadership of Mr. Yasushi Akashi, who was the head of the mission of the United Nations Transitional Authority in Cambodia, which oversaw the elections and helped to restore peace. In fact, on a very personal level, I have always considered Mr. Akashi-san as my sensei in United Nations peacekeeping. But he was always affected, and so was I, by the fact that 2 Japanese peacekeepers lost their lives in bringing peace to Cambodia. Mr. Haruyuki Takata from the Japanese police, who was serving as UN police officer, and Mr. Achuri Nakata, who was a civilian election volunteer, UN volunteer. In Timor-Leste, where I had the opportunity to serve in different capacities, but finally as the special representative of the Secretary General, like Mr. Akashi, and the head of the mission of United Nations Integrated Mission in Timor-Leste, UNMIT, I had the fortune of working with many talented Japanese peacekeepers, from the Japanese ground self-defense forces engineers who built roads and bridges in that small country, and roads and bridges that the Timorese people even today, after more than 17 years, still call Japanese bridges and Japanese roads. They were constructed to such good quality that they are still providing support to Timor-Leste. I had the good fortune of having Japanese police officers who wrote textbooks for the national police, Timorese national police, which are being still used. And of course, to many Japanese civilian officers who supported the Timorese people and supported me in diverse areas, from political affairs. Mr. Ito-san used to be a political affairs officer at that time, working in the mission. Democratic governance, development, humanitarian assistance, and administration. Before UNMIT, we had a small office of the UN in Timor-Leste called UNOTIL, UN Office in Timor-Leste, whose head was Mr. Tsukihiro Hasegawa-san, who is also one of my teachers from whom I have learned a lot. But today, I want to reflect more on a younger colleague of mine who was my friend and true partner, and to whom I owe a debt of gratitude that I don't think I can ever repay. He was a seasoned diplomat who deeply cared about the people living in conflict-ridden countries. When I was appointed the Special Representative of the Secretary General in December 2006, I asked the then Secretary General, Mr. Kofi Annan, to appoint a strong deputy for me from the region who will understand and respect the culture and the customs of Asian countries. So the subsequent Secretary General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, appointed Mr. Takahisa Kawakami as the Deputy Special Representative for the rule of law in Timor-Leste. He was of great help to the Timorese people and to me personally, as he led the mission's efforts to restore peace and security and in creating the foundation for lasting peace by building the capacity of the national police officers as well as civil servants in the larger security sector. He was always very energetic, often went out on long walks in the mornings and weekends. I left Timor-Leste in December of 2009. He remained there, but unfortunately in the morning of 14th March 2010, he died from natural causes at his apartment after one of his regular walks in the morning. He died while trying to help the country to restore peace. He died while keeping and building peace. In many ways, I think, like Mr. Nakata-san and Mr. Takata-san in Cambodia, Mr. Kawakami-san was also a true UN peacekeeper, and his legacy will live on through the future generations of United Nations peacekeepers. I mentioned these cases not only for personal reasons, but also to indicate to you that the nature of threats to global peace and stability has significantly evolved since the early days of United Nations peacekeeping and since the days in which the UN missions were actually monitoring ceasefires or were serving as a transitional authority or focusing on institution building. Today, the UN operations are increasingly called upon to respond to situations within and not between states. So it's an intra-state problem rather than an interstate problem. Peacekeeping operations are also being increasingly deployed to environments where there is no peace process in place. Conflicts are increasingly entangled with transitional organized crime and terrorism, making them unamenable to negotiated political solutions. Armed groups, in fact, are routinely using terrorist tactics and very often targeting peacekeepers, be it in Somalia, be it in Mali, be it in Central Africa or elsewhere. Furthermore, The deployment of new technologies in conflict are also making conflicts more complex and more intractable. These difficult conditions are further compounded by the inaccessibility of many peacekeeping operations characterized by very complicated supply chains, low availability of essential resources such as water and energy, diseases, and injuries coupled with the lack of appropriate and timely medical care. United Nations peace operations are also under increasing financial and budgetary pressures. Friends, recognizing all these challenges which I have just outlined for you, and recognizing that addressing these challenges requires the support of all peacekeeping partners, the Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, last year launched an Action for Peacekeeping, we call it A4P, initiative in March 2018. I will not go into all the details of the initiative. You can see it on the website. But really speaking, there were three major elements. He called on the Security Council, the troop and police contributing countries, the host governments, the regional organizations, and other peacekeeping partners to do, first, refocus peacekeeping with realistic expectations. So expectations cannot be that peacekeeping operation will turn Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo into Tokyo. That is not going to happen. And that is not the role of the peacekeeping operation. So I think we must have realistic expectations. Second, make peacekeeping missions stronger and safer. That's why I mentioned to you the challenges which we have faced, including inter alia with the Japanese nationals, but there are many others who in large numbers have sacrificed their lives for the cause of peace. And finally, third, to mobilize greater support for political solutions and for well-structured, well-equipped, and well-trained forces. After the launch of this initiative in March last year, 152 member states and 4 international organizations, the African Union, the European Union, the NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and the Organization of Francophonie, OIF, heeded the call of the Secretary General and endorsed the Declaration of Shared Commitments on United Nations peacekeeping operations. The declaration really divides the future UN peacekeeping works into 8 main thematic areas. First is politics. Second is women, peace and security. Third is protection. Fourth is safety and security. Fifth is performance and accountability. Sixth is partnership. Seventh is sustaining peace. And finally, eighth is conduct and discipline. In November 2018, the Secretary General reaffirmed the A4P as the core agenda for all peacekeeping-related work. And in response, we, the Secretariat, have identified established priorities for implementation, and we have also developed concrete, actionable, and measurable targets within fixed timelines. I have always believed that if something cannot be measured or is not measured, then it is very difficult to demonstrate any improvement, and there is very little motivation to demonstrate improvement. So that's why we have fixed concrete, actionable, measurable targets within fixed timelines. For their part, the member states, because it's a partnership, 20 member states have also volunteered to be champions of the implementation of one or more of the 8 thematic areas of the declaration. And I want to particularly thank Japan, the government, the Peace Cooperation Office for offering to champion the thematic area of performance. All A4P member state champions will be demonstrating leadership by convening and mobilizing other member states, endorsers to implement their own commitments. Strengthening the performance of UN peacekeeping operations, I think, is at the heart, is at the core of action for peacekeeping. And one of the central ways in which the Secretariat is responding to it is through the Secretary General's reform of the United Nations development system, of the peace and security architecture, and a new paradigm for management. Linking the three streams together was a crucial step in enhancing the mandate implementation and functioning of the organization while strengthening accountability. As part of these reforms, on 1st January this year, the Secretary General established my new department, the Department of Operational Support, and another department called Department of Management Strategy, Policy and Compliance. The underlying idea is to separate the policy from day-to-day operations, while of course ensuring the allocation of sufficient capacity to oversee and continuously improve internal administrative policy and compliance. So now I come to what the Department of Operational Support does. We have selected a vision, a motto for our department, which in 6 short words perfectly explains what we seek to do. And it says, serving the United Nations. So that is the objective, serving the United Nations, why we exist. But what is the quality which we bring to that serving the United Nations? Those are the next 3 words. Operating with excellence. And this is the motto which we have adopted. We will deliver on effective mandate implementation and support while providing guidance and advisory services to everybody across the globe, not only peacekeeping operations, but also our offices in Geneva, Vienna, Nairobi, elsewhere. And in some exceptional cases, exercising the authorities on behalf of those who cannot exercise them. For example, right now, tomorrow, a new political mission called BINU in Haiti will come into existence because the peacekeeping operation MINUJUST will close and a new political mission will come into existence. But for this political mission to come into existence, we have to recruit the people for the political mission before the mission starts. We cannot start recruiting the people after the mission has already begun. Somebody has to do this job because there is no head of the mission, because there is no mission right now. So I was exercising those authorities. I was recruiting people, sending them to Haiti, making arrangements for them. Now, of course, there is going to be a new special representative of BINU, Madame Helen Margaret Lalim, whose appointment was announced yesterday, and then she will, of course, take over. So we are also the gap fillers, if you like. Whenever there is a gap, then the Department of Operational Support rises to fill that gap. We also partner with client entities to mutually define requirements and co-create solutions in the areas of supply chain, uniform personnel support, human resources, capacity development, medical and transactional services. And I want to focus now on the Department of Operational Support and the action for peacekeeping. First and foremost, in the area of performance and accountability. A key priority for the Department of Operational Support has been in implementing the management reforms by providing improved support and service to our field operations. And to do this, we have created a special division, a one-stop shop, a single window, if you like, unique window, called Uniform Capability Support Division. So all the troop and police contributing countries, many of them with very small representations, they don't have to go to 10, 20 different places. They just come to one place for all administration, logistics, supply, information technology, any management-related issue. And as a result of creation of this Uniform Capability Support Division, we sign contracts, we call them Memorandums of Understanding, with each and every troop and police contributing countries. Many of them remain pending. That means that the people have deployed, but the MOU has not yet been signed. the number of units with unsigned MOUs has been halved. So that means since January to now, in 9 months, we have achieved for the first time something which was not achieved in the UN before. That means that less than 15 MOUs remain unsigned, whereas in December there were about 31 MOUs which were unsigned. In fact, it is quite likely that by the end of this month, we will for the first time have the number of unsigned MOUs less than the teens. That means they will be maximum 12 or 11. A figure never before achieved in the history of the UN. Second, the troops come with equipment. We call it contingent-owned equipment, armored personnel carrier, fuel truck, water truck, the equipment for the kitchen, their rifles, their guns, and so on. We have to assess whether the countries have deployed with all the required equipment or not. And whenever the gap is more than 70%, then I deduct money for that gap. I deduct money not only for the equipment, but I also deduct money from the reimbursement of personnel, because I use the equipment as a proxy indicator of performance. So I say if you have come with 60% of the equipment, so that means I will not pay you $1,465 per person per month, but I will pay you $1,465 multiplied by 0.6 because you are only operating at 60% of the level. And this was not very much appreciated. But with this, we have now been able to reduce the number of units with critical gaps, that means more than 70%, from 23 in December 2018 to only 12 in July of this year. So that means performance is improving because they are getting better equipment. We have also been regularly paying our troop and police contributing countries. We have paid about $1.7 billion from January to now. And we have also processed another $77.5 million of claims, which have not yet been paid. Claims are when there is a hostile act, when somebody dies, or when the equipment is damaged. Second area where we are focusing on is safety and security of our troops and our peacekeepers. The role of my department is critical, and that is in improving the medical rescue chain in our peacekeeping operations. We have been rolling out basic and advanced first aid training to troop and police contributing countries, and I want to particularly thank the government of Japan and the Peace Cooperation Office for being our very effective partner in this area. In fact, as we speak, there are 2 Japanese doctors which are working in Entebbe in Uganda in providing this training. We have also been implementing better quality standards. We have developed a curriculum for combat medics, the soldier doctors, if you like, with courses planned for the second half of this year. And we are also improving our level 1 and level 2 hospitals in our high-risk missions, Mali, South Sudan, Darfur, Democratic Republic of Congo, Central African Republic. We have set for ourselves a target, and the target is simple. We are not gods, nobody is God. So we cannot prevent every death. But at least we must ensure that no life will be sacrificed because of absence of timely and adequate medical care. So we will make every effort to make sure that the timely and adequate medical care is available for everybody. In order to provide this better health care, we have begun collecting data on the hospital performance reporting tool to assist us in identifying areas where current facilities are experiencing challenges, or on the other hand, demonstrating best practice. Because if they are demonstrating best practice, that can be spread to other parts of the world. We are also finalizing guidelines on the use of blood and blood products. And we are now actually supporting, I got this idea, to support the missions in creating what I call walking blood banks, because then we don't have to maintain the cold chain, buy the blood. If everybody's blood group is known, if everybody has volunteered to provide blood, then you can just take out at the time when you need and give it to the other person. We are also looking to implement remote medicine, telemedicine possibilities to provide super specialty care in those far-off locations. And also this will be advantageous because then the super specialists will not be in any danger because they are not living under the attack of mortar attack or bomb attack. They are sitting in Japan or elsewhere and providing advice by internet, by video teleconference, by phone. So we are examining this. We have also completed 4 health risk assessments in the high-risk missions, and we are increasing the number of aeromedical evacuation teams, which are critical. We also need to increase the number of night-flying helicopters because most of the attacks, you have to remember that the terrorists, they are also quite smart. They attack in the evening, at the dawn. So by the time the attack is over, it is night time. And then we have to take out people during the night time. So we need night-flying helicopters, we need night-capable medical care, and we are looking at all this. But supposing if people die, we are also looking at how to do a faster processing of the death and disability claims because the families must have an assurance that if something happens very untoward, the UN will care. And this we are trying to improve. In fact, we have now reduced by about 1/3. Earlier on in February 2018, processing of a claim used to take about, on an average, 170 days, 6 months. We have now reduced it to 109 days, and I am trying to work towards 65 days, 2 months maximum, not more than that. Now, coming to safety and security, we are also reviewing our supply chain value streams to separate the activities that add value from the viewpoint of the ultimate user, from the viewpoint of the client, from those activities that create waste, duplication, and need to be eliminated. Actually, what I'm saying looks very revolutionary in the context of the UN, but actually this is what the Japanese companies did in 1970s with great success, the entire programs of Toyota, other car manufacturers, and the rest. We believe that as we go further on this path, we will improve the medical care and the recovery of our people. Technology is also looked after by my department, which plays a critical role in enhancing the safety and security of UN peacekeepers. We are launching what I call a 5-year strategy for greater use of technology. Again, to give you a short sentence, I do not believe that we can do peacekeeping in the 21st century with the equipment of the 19th century. When in the 19th century, when we used to go on patrol, then people used to go on horseback. But today, nobody will go on horseback for patrol. They will go in armored personal vehicles and armored vehicles. So I think we need to get the right technology in operation. But technology in itself is not enough. Because until unless the soldiers, the police, the civilians, they are trained in the utilization of technology, the human-technology interface, until unless it is clear, it will not work. Because we may have the best technology, but if people don't know how to use it, it will not work. And I want to therefore convey again a very special gratitude to Japan. This was actually a project announced by His Excellency Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in 2014, and we have been working very closely on this. We are looking at improving the training in operation of heavy engineering equipment, signal interception, medical, and all this is happening, started with Africa, but now happening also in Asia, with courses being planned in Vietnam and then subsequently in Indonesia, Thailand, and Cambodia. This is what we call the Triangular Partnership Project, and I want to tell you that how deeply grateful the United Nations is that government of Japan has contributed a total of $83 million since the beginning of this project. In addition, very highly skilled self-defense force personnel have deployed to train the trainees from Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, and many other countries. And I think with this, again, I want to look at the outcome, because there's no point in only describing the process to you. What has happened is that 365 uniformed personnel have been trained in heavy engineering operation. Actually, 366 people have been trained, because one of them was me also. So I went to review their program, and Colonel Miyamoto and Major Hirota in Nairobi, they gave me training for about half an hour, 45 minutes to operate the bulldozer and the excavator. And I could do it. They are very good trainers. I mean, they explain very well. So we have also trained over 3,500 signals interception people. In that, we did a special course for women signal interception people, women soldiers. In that, there were 155 women soldiers who were trained in signal interception, and 15% of them, which is a very high number, 15% of them have already been deployed to peacekeeping operations. So not only that there is training, there is successful training, there is successful deployment at the end of it. And I think, I hope Mr. Iwai will be speaking more on this. It is your project. But I do want to say a very big thank you to Japan and to the Peace Cooperation Office. Coming now very briefly to women, peace and security, I want to tell you that we are integrating both a gender perspective and a geographical distribution perspective, because I don't want that we should have more women, but more women coming only from one group of countries, say Western European and others. We need to balance both geography and gender. We are promoting more women through a project which we call the Senior Women Talent Pipeline Project. This is again with the help of Japan, with the support from Japan. 250 candidates were taken under the Senior Women Talent Pipeline Project, and slightly less than 10%, 23 of them, have already been deployed in senior positions, like the deputy head of mission or like the director positions, D2. So, of course, we keep on looking together to expand this program as well. We are also having a program called LC Initiative for Field Missions Facilities and Infrastructure Unit, because we must create appropriate conditions for women to contribute as peacekeepers. I have made a decision that the women as a rule, women soldiers, irrespective of their rank, will have the first priority for allotment of accommodation with an attached bathroom, because it's not a question of who is the general and who is the major. I think women have to be given a precedence. It's also a question of safety and security. It's also a question of their psychological comfort. We are also working on a different wavelength. We are working with women's organizations in the host countries of peacekeeping operations to encourage them to develop businesses from which we can buy, because procurement is under me. As of 30th April this year, there are 6,882 suppliers of goods and services to the UN, which are majority controlled by women. That means 51% or more shares belong to women. But if you look at the percentage, it represents only 3.4% of the total registered vendors. So that means we have to do much more in this regard. Last few issues. We have to work on better environmental management in peacekeeping operations, both from the viewpoint of future conflict, but also from the viewpoint of today's best practice. And I will not go into all the details, but we are working on several initiatives, including solar power generation, wind power generation, wastewater recycling, proper disposal of solid waste, and I think we will keep on working on this as we go along. I have virtually come to the end of my presentation. Of course, I can expand on any of the topics during the course of the discussions. But in conclusion, I want to say three important issues, if you like, from my heart. First, I believe that there are many successes of peacekeeping. We also acknowledge that there are many areas where peacekeeping could have done better. So we are not saying that everything is very good, no. But where it has not done better, it is a partnership. It cannot be improved by people standing outside and criticizing. It can only be improved by all the member states, the Security Council, the General Assembly, the Secretariat, the troop and police contributing countries working together. So the most important issue to remember in peacekeeping is partnerships. Second important element which I want to highlight is innovation. That is why I did not go into a very bureaucratic type of a lecture. I gave you many initiatives which we have undertaken since January of this year, reasonably successfully. But continuous innovation is the call of the day if we are to be successful. And finally, the last two words I want to mention because I am sitting here in Japan. Arigatou gozaimasu. Thank you very much to all the Japanese people, to the Japanese leaders, to the Japanese diplomats, to the Japanese ground self-defense forces, to the police, because I think you have demonstrated over the last 27 years since Cambodia very effective participation in contributing to global peace, and for which I thank you. Thank you, Professor Fujiwara.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Dr. Khare. Your words are music to the Japanese here. With Dr. Khare's outstanding speech, I believe we know more about the process or the mechanics on how peace operations by the United Nations is actually carried out. Thank you very much indeed. In your speech, there has been several references to the work of the government of Japan. And our next speaker is Mr. Fumio Iwai, who is working exactly on the subject, Secretariat of the International Peace Cooperation Headquarters. So, Mr. Iwai, please.
Thank you very much, Professor Fujiwara. USG Dr. Khare, and all your hardworking and wonderful staff, thank you for being here in the first place with us for this seminar today and for making this seminar happen. I would also like to extend my appreciation to Professor Heng, who unfortunately was not here due to his business trip, but he did great work to organize this occasion in a short period of time. And good morning, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this morning. In fact, this seminar was organized in a very short time with the confirmation of Dr. Khare's visit, this time to Tokyo. And the announcement was made only 2 weeks ago. As there's so many of you who have joined us, we appreciate that fact, and I think it tells the degree of interest in this important subject today. As all Japanese know, this year, 30 years of Heisei era has ended, and a brand new era called Reiwa started. In fact, Heisei era witnessed the dynamic development or evolvement of Japanese peace operations. In fact, we started from zero. So first of all, let me briefly touch upon how Japan's UN peace operation has been evolving. Heisei era started in 1989, and in 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait. In response, the UN Security Council authorized member states to take all necessary measures to liberate Kuwait, and the following year, in 1991, the Gulf War started. At that time, unlike today, Japanese economy has grown rapidly, and Japan has risen to be the world economic power. Naturally, the expectation from the international community has grown larger, and Japan was also eager to respond to it and to show that Japan could take a responsibility as a full-fledged member of the world leading nations. However, Japan could not contribute any personnel when it was called upon to do so. Instead, Japan pledged a rather generous financial contribution, $13 billion towards the coalition for its effort. But this Japanese contribution was not appreciated much. Here you can see the advertisement which Kuwaiti government posted on the various newspapers circulated in the world. You can see all those flags, but Japanese flag is not among them. Also, this is the list of the countries to whom Kuwait, or the government of Kuwait, expressed its appreciation. Japan is not in it. In the middle, this is the book published by a renowned journalist. The title here says, Defeat of Japan in 1991. It says, Japan had lost the Gulf War. Japan has lost the Gulf War. Against the backdrop of this humiliating sort of experience, Japan in 1982 enacted the International Peace Cooperation Act, so-called PKO law. After the lengthy and fierce national debate at the Diet, the focus of their deliberation was the constitutionality of the self-defense force deployment overseas. As a result, a kind of safeguard, a set of conditions were incorporated in the Act in order to preempt the possibility of the SDF deployment overseas being regarded as unconstitutional. The PKO law has rather rigid procedures before the deployment, as well as a very clear list of activities Japan can be engaged with in terms of peacekeeping. But anyhow, the law was made, and Japan started its participation in UN peacekeeping, starting with UNTAC in Cambodia. Since then, Japan has sent personnel, including humanitarian personnel and election observers, so far to 28 UN peacekeeping missions around the world. So you see the Heisei era coincided with a period of dynamic evolvement of Japanese peacekeeping participation history. And we hope we continue carrying the torch and move forward. Now let's take a look at how the Japanese public opinion changed after a 27-year experience. The slide is the result of the public opinion survey conducted late last year by Yomiuri newspaper. The question for the graph on the left was, what event do you consider as the most significant political event during the Heisei era? And how do you see its impact on the society? To this question, the enactment of PKO law in 1992 came out the top. Also, the overwhelming respondents answered that its effect on the society was positive. On the right side of the slide, the question here was to evaluate the deployment of Japan's self-defense force to overseas as Japan's international contribution, not necessarily confined to the PKO business. But as you can see, the total of the persons who answered that they value came out more than half, around 60%, while those who answered negative was 35%. So we can fairly say, since 1992, since the enactment of the law, the Japanese public opinion has grown increasingly favorable toward Japan's participation in peace operations. In a nutshell, Japan's engagement with peacekeeping is no longer a very special thing. It becomes quite normal. But at the same time, we have to be very careful about the fact that we do not have much tailwind because things come slow. This chart shows 27 years history of Japan's participation in the peacekeeping. We sent out the total of 12,500 personnel to 28 missions around the globe, and 97% of them are from the SDF. Yes, now here you can see the shift in the numbers of Japanese dispatch personnel. We can see three surge in the graph. The first one is obviously by the deployment of SDF in Cambodia. And the second surge is East Timor. And the last one is a conversion of a number of missions, Timor-Leste, Haiti, and South Sudan. After the pull-out of engineering battalion from Juba, we have 4 staff officers at the headquarters of UNMISS, South Sudan. While the condition regarding peace operations has been evolving in Japan, the situation surrounding the UN peacekeeping missions as a whole has been changed dramatically, as Mr. Khare spoke to you earlier. In 1992, when the law was enacted, the top 5 largest personnel contributing countries were, as you see, France, United Kingdom, Canada, Indonesia, and the Netherlands, mostly so-called developed countries. 27 years later, 2019, it's now Ethiopia, Rwanda, Bangladesh, India, and Nepal. All of them are so-called developing countries. And Japan was the 31st in 1992, but it has dropped to 107th out of 122 in 2019. So today, undoubtedly, the developing countries are the key players of the UN peacekeeping operations, together with the developed countries, developed troop and police contributing countries. Under these circumstances, we think enabling those developing countries' capabilities is quite important so that they can cope with the situation in a better way. One example is the Triangular Partnership Project that USG Dr. Khare mentioned earlier. It's also called RDEC, UN Project for Rapid Development of Enabling Capabilities. It started in the African continent, but it now expands to Asia. In partnership with the UN Secretariat and the host countries, Japan dispatches experienced engineering team, roughly 20-25 people of the self-defense force to train engineering personnel of troop contributing countries in the training centers located in the region. First, we started in Kenya, as Dr. Khare mentioned. Since 2015, I believe. And so far, the training courses have been successfully running every year since then in Kenya. And right now, we have one sort of special training in Uganda. Earlier this month, I had a privilege to visit there, to Jinja, to our drive from Kampala, the capital, to see how the training is actually conducted, and listen to our team as well as Ugandan partners about their assessment of the modality of training and so on, to further improve the quality of the training. Because, as I said, this is somewhat special training solely for Ugandan soldiers, and the very first time to do so. That is why we need quite accurate assessment from both sides, from the Japanese side as well as the host country side. Another one is in Vietnam for the Asia Pacific countries. It was done once as a pilot project last year, and I believe next month we'll have the first one in Vietnam as well. And I believe it will continue for some years to come because a number of ASEAN countries want to host the course. When I went to Uganda, the very head of the training center said most of the trainees will be deployed after the completion of training to ANISOM, one of the peacekeeping operations led by the African Union. Under these projects, Japan has deployed so far 188 instructors from the SDF and roughly 300 trainees from 17 troop contributing countries have been trained so far. These trainees have and will bring back the knowledge and technical skills they have acquired to their home countries, and therefore improve the quality of the engineering work that those countries undertake in peace operations around the globe. I think this kind of training has a merit that is a quick impact as well as lasting benefit to the recipient countries. So would like them to continue this year and beyond. One point that I want to make is though TPP initiative is repeatedly appreciated and mentioned at the UN fora, but unfortunately those instructors have not been counted among the number of personnel contribution to the UN peacekeeping. I think in one way or another, it's a contribution to the enhancement of the peacekeeping. I hope something can be done on this point. Related to the previous projects, TPP, here's another example of Japan's contribution. Not only training directly the personnel, but Japan also led the project to establish engineering manual for the UN peacekeeping operations. The manual indicates standards on required capabilities, tasks, and trainings to all participating countries to the UN peace operations. For example, these days, the hotspot is quite dangerous because of the presence of IEDs, for example. This manual touches upon that aspect as well. Then the most important point of having this manual is standardization of judgment and technical levels of the troops involved in the peacekeeping. And all the engineering teams around the world can do the same level of work in peacekeeping, regardless of their original capacities and technical levels. A little bit about women. One of the most important factors to the sustainable peace building is women's participation in peace and security. According to the International Peace Institute, among the 182 peace agreements signed between 1989 till 2011, an agreement is 35% more likely to last for 15 years when women participate in its creation. This is a good thing, so we need to include more women into peace process. This slide shows the 5 pillars of Japan's National Action Plan of Women, Peace and Security. The 5 pillars are participation, conflict prevention, protection, humanitarian relief, recovery and reconstruction assistance, and framework for monitoring and evaluation and revision. Here are the examples of our Secretariat in line with the National Action Plan. Pillar 1 and Pillar 3, participation and protection. Because my office is responsible for sending out Japanese personnel for peacekeeping purpose. Since we have staff officers in AMIS, roughly 25% or 50%, so it means 1 or 2 of them are women. I hope even we have a bigger number of personnel overseas, the percentage will be maintained. Lastly, this is an example of women's involvement. She's an election observer then. In tribute to the big conference, TICA 7 we had, here we want to reiterate that Japan is committed to support Africa. And one of the pillars, you can see supporting Africa's own initiative, build institutions, and enhance governance. Africa is the continent where the most numbers of UN peace missions are operating today, and Africa needs peace and stability in order to develop its economy and social standard. Therefore, Japan is committed, as I said, to support African countries through various initiatives, including TCAT process. We support them to build institutions and enhance governance. We support the initiatives led by them, and we support African nations to support their refugees, IDPs, and other vulnerable people. I particularly focused on building institutions, enhance governance, and support initiatives led by Africa, because as Mr. Khare pointed out, our political solution is the most important element. I served as ambassador in Iraq for almost 3 years, and what I witnessed there is external actors may not be able by themselves to change the situation on the ground. Yes, on our side, member states, the Secretariat, and others, civic societies, all of them partners. But on the other side, the recipient side, they are also partners. Unless they have good governance and so on, it's not, or we may not be, or we together, the international community as the recipient country, may not able to reach the peace and stability in the region. I hope I've given you some ideas on the way Japan has come, what Japan is doing, and what Japan is committed to continue. I admit we still have a lot of challenges ahead, but with the help of our partners, those challenges will be overcome. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much indeed, Iwai-san, for introducing the efforts made by the Japanese government. Allow me to add a couple things. One, when you talk about troops and police contribution, it's not only about the number of troops. A large number of people from Ethiopia or Bangladesh is making a great contribution to peacekeeping, but we should also be aware that there's a need for a corps of engineers. And if I'm not mistaken, the Japanese SCF has played critical roles in offering, engineers in the conflict regions. So it's not only about the numbers. And I should also like to add that the activities of peace operation is, of course, not limited to people in uniform. It requires close association work with responsible agencies for refugee assistance, for example. And on this, JICA, along with many Japanese NGOs, has made tremendous difference in peacekeeping. So it really is a network that we need. These were the two additional remarks. But this is the time for Q&A.